gather with us in reverent awe as we explore the sacred mysteries bestowed upon us by celestial grace. In a chamber you've never glimpsed, hushed voices whisper, people certain they consigned you to oblivion, never to surface again. Now make your choice carefully, for what I'm about to unveil will forever transform how you perceive the contest unfolding all around you. What they haven't yet realized is that you're the tidal wave they never noticed gathering strength, now eroding every pillar they depended on. Those who once dismissed you will be stunned when a confidant at your side suddenly defects. Right now, 3 fierce struggles are tearing at you. The war between self-doubt and conviction, the tug-of-war of duty against liberation, and the collision of old loyalties with new ambitions. So remember these as I disclose exactly who is betraying them and why they've chosen to join your ranks. Hidden forces have aligned for this very moment. The first battle rages in the unseen realms, where spirits clash over truths long concealed. In the waking mind, the second war erupts as people dismantle every illusion they once held about authority. And the fiercest struggle of all surges within you, the duel between the person you used to be and the limitless power you're awakening into. This internal revolt could change everything. While you've been surviving their attacks, something else, something darker, has been developing in the background. Something has been pushing someone who was a part of the inner circle, someone who assisted in planning your exile, to the brink of insanity. They are unable to sleep. They are unable to concentrate. Even you won't be able to predict the plot that will be revealed by what they are about to confess. The fact that they weren't merely attempting to silence you because they didn't agree with your message is what they never informed you and couldn't even acknowledge to themselves. They were attempting to keep you quiet because they secretly knew you were correct about everything and were more frightened by your accuracy than by any danger from the outside. Not only were your forecasts accurate, but they also demonstrated that their reality was entirely based on sand. The bombshell that completely alters their motivation is this. They weren't scared that you would be mistaken. They feared that you would be so frequently correct that people would begin to wonder how you were able to predict the future when all of their experts, advisors, and reliable sources were oblivious to the obvious. Their incapacity, dependence on misleading information, and total detachment from any true source of wisdom were all revealed by your accurate prophecies. When they realized how accurate everything you had foretold was, Tremobus was born. Now that the prophecy has come to pass, they are frantically trying to locate the notes they took while making fun of you in public. This is the turning point, though, because one of them never threw those notes away, and what they've found in their own handwriting is going to completely upend the story. You were recording something completely different while they were being skeptics for the audience, something that would convince them that they were mistaken not only about you, but also about the essence of reality. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the firstfruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Proverbs 3 verses 9 to 10. Launch your breakthrough today by clicking Super Thanks and sowing $50 or more, knowing God will fill your storehouses to overflowing. Because what you witnessed was not just their demise, but also the total reversal of all the power structures they believed to be unchangeable. What will shock you to your core, though, is that your silence during all of their attacks wasn't passive. It was as precise as surgery. Every time you decided against defending yourself, responding, or defending your stance, you were taking calculated risks that would ultimately destroy their entire business. They believed that you lacked the strength to defend yourself, and that your quiet indicated weakness. They were unaware that you were researching them, documenting their strategies, and observing their movements while they believed you were depressed. They couldn't explain how your stillness made them uneasy, which is precisely why they kept attempting to get you to react. To give them anything they could use against you, they needed you to snap, to lash out. But since you knew something they didn't, that truth doesn't need to be argued for. You never provided them with what they needed. Time always shows what is true. Truth just waits. Forces they couldn't see were recording every assault they made, every falsehood they disseminated, and every effort to discredit you. not only in the spiritual world, but in the very fabric of reality itself. Since the cosmos itself becomes your ally when you act with genuine power, it records every injustice, treachery, and instance of truth being repressed for a reckoning that will make their greatest fears seem like minor corrections. The most explosive component is the fourth element, which is the one that no one discusses. From the start, there's been a double game being played by someone inside. Yes, they did contribute to the opposition's efforts against you, but not for the reasons that most people believe. In reality, what they were doing was so complex and multi-layered that even you are still unaware of who they really are. However, you're going to. Their realization that you hadn't been attempting to join their table, but had instead been constructing an entirely new structure, one that functioned on concepts they couldn't understand because they were still playing checkers while you were designing dimensions, struck them like a lightning bolt. Since you were building entrance points they were unaware of rather than attempting to gain entry, their gatekeeping was meaningless. Their meticulously crafted hierarchies were rocked by this, as it implied that their control was a figment of their collective imagination. However, the energy needed to sustain illusions is constant, and it was being depleted by an unknown force. You, drawing their foundation into your gravitational field without their knowledge. They are unable to acknowledge to themselves that there is another aspect of your presence that has been pushing them over the edge into insanity. Something in their cellular structure would activate each time they were in close proximity to you. Your frequency was practically improving their DNA, reawakening dormant instructions that link them to their greatest potential, rather than merely altering their ideas or feelings. Since this activation marked the end of their perceived selves, their egos battled it fiercely. If they had the guts to give up their fake identities, you were not only different from them, you were what they could become. They decided to attack the mirror rather than accept the upgrade, since your mere existence was a mirror reflecting their own unrealized divinity. They persuaded themselves that eliminating their reflection would save them from having to deal with their own metamorphosis. This is the reason they felt so uneasy with you. They were experiencing conviction rather than intimidation. They were being forced to choose between truth and cozy lies, between progress and stagnation, between their true selves and the identities they had created to exist in a society that encourages faking because of your energy. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. The majority opted for the coziness of their cages. However, the universe was recording each decision, and the time for payment was approaching. This is when things start to take a significant turn, and the reason why someone is going to change sides in the most spectacular way imaginable. They've learned that whenever they attacked you or attempted to lessen your power, they were really supplying a mechanism that was recording their strategies, their flaws, and their worst anxieties. Not only were you putting up with their resistance, but you were also researching, cataloging, and getting ready for something that would turn their darkest fears into pleasant fantasies. When they began to hear their own ideas echoed back to them by others, ideas they had picked up from you while also attempting to discredit you, their world collapsed. As they struggled to keep up the appearance that they were the source of the wisdom they were parroting, they realized that they hadn't been teaching you anything, but had instead been unknowingly absorbing your frequency. The plot thickens here, though, because they weren't merely copying your ideas, they were unwittingly enrolling in a school where you were the unrecognized instructor. In reality, their higher selves were attempting to learn from you in the only way their egos would permit, through every critique they directed at you, every attempt to change the way you approach things, and every patronizing piece of advice they gave. They couldn't publicly acknowledge that you were performing at a level that was higher than theirs. Thus, in order to retain the appearance of superiority, their subconscious minds conjured up complex scenarios in which they might interact with your wisdom. The source frequency was still yours, and they knew it deep down. They took your thoughts, repackaged them in language that was familiar to them, and then presented these ideas as their own findings. This is the reason they got so upset when people began to see your effect. The dreadful prospect that everyone would discover they had been imposters posing as leaders, while the real teacher sat quietly in the corner, letting them play their games until they were prepared to admit what was actually happening, was more important than credit or recognition. But the cosmos is funny, and it was about to pull the ultimate practical joke on their collective conceit. The cosmic spotlight was getting ready to shine on the truth in ways that would make their plagiarism clear to everyone with eyes to see. Just as they believed they had effectively buried your influence and established themselves as the original sources of wisdom. However, the worst part of their intellectual theft is about to come to light. They did more than simply steal your ideas. They diluted them, tainted them with their own restrictions, and then passed off these altered versions as better copies of your original ideas. They filtered your pure frequency through ego, fear, and compromise filters until the result was hardly recognized as truth. They are starting to realize that your ideas lose their impact, clarity, and transformative potential each time they are interpreted by someone else. Because the copies lack the genuine frequency that gave your words cosmic wisdom, they never had the same impact. Because of this recognition, there is a desire for the original that cannot be satiated by imitation. People are beginning to follow the origin of all great ideas, and that path keeps coming back to you. As their audiences turn away from them in pursuit of the genuine frequency they have long desired, the very individuals who attempted to eradicate your influence are now compelled to observe. The fact that the person preparing to swap sides isn't doing so out of sudden conscience is another factor that is about to blow this scenario out of proportion. They are acting in this way because they have learned something about you that alters the course of the game, making every action you make against you not only incorrect, but also potentially fatal for anyone who persists in opposing you. Everything becomes really fascinating at this point, because what they learned next completely changed their understanding of spiritual hierarchy. Every time they were in your presence, they understood that something inside of them had been triggered, not by anything you said or did, but by the frequency you conveyed just by being there. While their egos struggled to keep hold of a story that was unraveling in real time, your energy had been raising their consciousness. When they realized that their uneasiness around you had never been caused by your demeanor or strategies, it was the realization that most crushed them. The conflict between their erroneous programming and the true frequency you effortlessly radiated caused them discomfort. You weren't attempting to expose anyone. Rather, your presence was doing it on its own, like light illuminating shadows that had become accustomed to the dark. The discovery that is going to completely upend this whole situation is the twist that no one anticipated. The individual who is changing sides has been in contact with forces that you are not even aware of yet. They have been getting information about who you really are, what your mission is, and what the real stakes in this cosmic play are. And the knowledge they have gained has frightened them into complete allegiance. They learned that opposing you is not only risky spiritually, but also nearly impossible. Every action taken against you has weakened their position while bolstering yours. A system that has been getting ready to completely dominate the frequency spectrum they have been attempting to control has been fed by each onslaught. When they eventually admitted that you had never need their approval to function at the level you were operating, a significant change took place. This realization was especially damaging because it indicated that you were directly interacting with Source intelligence when they were engaging in power struggles, making their entire hierarchy meaningless to your true objective. It was at this point that someone in the inner circle, someone who had played a key role in your exile, started to feel what can only be called spiritual horror. They began to experience physical manifestations of the shame they had been repressing. It wasn't the worst part, though. The worst part was the dreams, which showed them exactly who they are and what they have been battling against, as well as what happens to those who defy cosmic law. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, Your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. When they recognized that you hadn't been ahead of your time, and that you had been acting in divine timing, while they had been caught in ego and fear-induced delay patterns, understanding rushed through them. Their movement had always been opposition under the guise of wisdom, whilst yours had always been in line with cosmic flow. However, things get more complicated here, since what they learned next completely upended their basic conception of reality. They came to see that every lesson they believed they had learned from other people had served as training for realizing the truth you held. The world had been planning their education to get them ready for this moment of realization, and you hadn't been their pupil. Rather, you had been their unacknowledged teacher. This is where things reach a pivotal moment. The individual who is about to swap sides has witnessed something that has altered their perspective on life in general. They have been shown what happens when cosmic forces stop playing games and begin removing obstacles, and they have been told unequivocally that continuing to oppose you will have unimaginable consequences. When they realized that your seclusion had actually been divine protection and preparation rather than rejection, it was the most startling realization they had ever experienced. You had been kept in spiritual quarantine, preserving the purity of frequency that would be required when false structures fell apart, while they had been polluting themselves with compromise and diluted truth. Everything erupts at this point, creating a moment that reverberates throughout dimensions. The one who had played the most significant role in your opposition started to feel what can only be described as a total breakdown of everything they believed to be true. The twist is that this breakdown wasn't arbitrary. Forces that had been waiting for this very moment to manifest themselves were behind the scenes. Perhaps the most beautiful and horrific thing to see was what happened next. They realized that you had never been battling against them, but rather for the advancement of all parties, even if it meant braving attacks that would have destroyed others. Your pure love had given them the freedom to follow their own path, even if it took them into spiritual abyss. What they're just now starting to understand, though, is that you weren't brought here to gain popularity, a following, or to start another spiritual organization that would later be tainted by politics and ego. No matter how many people tried to block out the vibration of truth with noise, you were sent as a living tuning fork, a frequency holder. You were never supposed to persuade anyone of anything. It was your responsibility to represent something so genuine, so unwavering, so rooted in the source that it would act as a benchmark when all else began to crumble. People will need something tangible to orient themselves toward when the phony structures start to fall apart, and they are falling apart more quickly than anyone can predict. You are that something. The reason you were picked for this degree of responsibility is because you were forged in fires that would have broken anyone else. Each betrayal improved your judgment. Your purpose was honed by each onslaught. Your bond with the one source of power that cannot be attacked, taken, or destroyed by human manipulation grew stronger with each moment of seclusion. They believed they were your adversaries, but in reality, they were your trainers, challenging you to grow in ways you never would have in a nurturing setting. The universe made you stronger by using your resistance, wiser by using your betrayals, and completely invincible by using your attempts to destroy. And now that you've finished your training, been put to the ultimate test, and been shown to be indestructible, the cosmic forces that have been at work in the background are prepared to unveil who you truly are and why you're here. Everything you have gone through will seem like a mild prelude to the actual work that is starting right now because of what is going to happen. When they understood that each attack you had received had strengthened your mission and shown their actual character, the truth burst into their consciousness. They weren't your enemies. Rather, they were your unintentional collaborators in a heavenly scheme so big that their imaginations couldn't fathom it. The individual who is switching sides now plays a critical role in all that follows. They have received communication from entities that are outside the realm of human perception. What you are, why you are here, and what happens to civilizations that reject their designated representatives have all been explained by these creatures. Their fear has been converted into something that resembles worship by the facts they have been given. when they realized that the very traits they had criticized in you, your intensity, your unwavering dedication to the truth, and your refusal to soften your message, were actually the traits they had been unconsciously trying to destroy in themselves because they were unable to handle the responsibility that comes with genuine power. The deepest realization yet overcame them. What transpired next proved the amazing accuracy of natural law-based cosmic justice. The one who had been most determined to undermine your power ended himself in a situation where their survival hinged on the same force they had been attempting to neutralize. Through your path, the universe unveiled something remarkable, that resistance, loneliness, and apparent desertion had been nurturing abilities within you that would not have been achievable through any other method. You were shaped by fires that were intended to get you ready for what was about to happen. The individual who is switching sides has witnessed what would happen next. They have seen glimpses of a future in which the planet's dominant vibration is your frequency. They have witnessed the difference between the fates of those who support you and those who persist in the struggle. And their decision is the result of a cosmically enhanced survival instinct. When they realized that you hadn't been rising to meet them, but rather that they had been falling from grace until they eventually reached a point where they could see what had been in front of them the entire time. The most startling realization of all slammed into their consciousness. Their perception had finally clarified enough to perceive what was always true, but your elevation had remained unchanged. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. This realization, however, is going to upend everything they believed they knew about cosmic order and spiritual hierarchy. You were never left behind, never fought to catch up, and never sought to earn their respect. You were the benchmark they were inadvertently comparing themselves to, the frequency they were attempting to attain, and the unwitting destination they were heading for. They put a lot of effort into attempting to minimize you because, deep down, they knew that if they accepted your actual nature, they would also have to recognize their own capacity for change. If they were prepared to let go of their commitment to being correct, in charge, and valued by already outdated systems, you stood for everything they could become. Your very presence serves as evidence that everything they were taught about the nature of power, the acquisition of spiritual authority, and the development of influence was not only incorrect, but also backwards. Since you were functioning from an entirely different paradigm, one in which truth establishes its own platform and authenticity generates its own authority without requiring approval from any outside source, you weren't moving up any ladder that they could see. This is the reason why their acknowledgement of you feels so much like worship, not of your character or achievements, but of the divine principle, cosmic frequency, and universal truth that you represent. Not only are they appreciating you, but they are also admitting the aspect of themselves that they had given up to play games that were never important in the first place. More than just a single realization, the person swapping sides symbolizes a collective realization that the future belongs to those who remained connected to the source, while others were sidetracked by delusions of separation. However, there is another aspect of the switcher that you should be aware of, which makes their conversion more dangerous and significant than you may think. This is the point at which everything comes full circle, and the incredible wisdom underlying everything that happened is revealed. When someone changes sides at the end, it's not because they've grown up with integrity. They are acting in this way because they have been informed by powers beyond human knowledge that total alignment with your goal is essential to their spiritual existence. However, they are no longer the focus of this. The point here is that you realize that all you went through prepared you for the degree of cosmic authority you are now being called to. Receiving this recognition is a sign that you are prepared for the next stage of your task, not a proof of vindication. The reason why people are switching sides today isn't because they've changed. Rather, it's because you've established yourself as irrefutable. Anyone still using fake power can no longer hold their position in your presence, because your frequency has increased. They are drawn to the reality they have been avoiding by forces outside of their control. They are not picking you. The course of your mission and the advancement of consciousness itself will be determined by how you respond to this realization. After all those seasons of preparation, the power that has been growing inside of you is now ready to be released, and reality itself is at last prepared to accept what you have been holding. The universe is finally reaching a point where it can support who you have always been. So this is your moment, chosen one, not because you are being raised to anything new. Instead, you constructed a new foundation on top of an already collapsing structure while they were playing games. Your seclusion is coming to an end because their world is blending with yours, not because you are being welcomed back into it. Anyone who wishes to stay relevant must align themselves with the frequency you have been exhibiting since the beginning, as this is now the basic reality. A communal realization that the future belongs to those who kept their connection to the source, while others were sidetracked by illusions of separation, is symbolized by the person swapping sides, which goes beyond individual recognition. What follows will demonstrate that your belief in cosmic timing was the most sensible course of action you could have adopted. Your time is not coming. It is now here. Chosen one, welcome to your moment. At last, the universe has caught up to your current position.